As we started to dig in, we understood a bit more about the history of institutions and how student services have been brought in and how many academic departments there were and how siloed they were naturally. And therefore, the idea of connecting information and servicing it in a way that hyper personalized and across all of these different fragmented systems, doing that is a very challenging problem.
That was Chase Williams, CEO and co-founder of the edtech company Pathify. We had a great conversation about digital hubs and really digital transformation more broadly and how these improve the student experience, they save staff time, they reduce costs, and they drive institutional outcomes like belonging and retention. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Connected College podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've helped more than 100 colleges and universities change what they offer, how they operate, and how they're organized to enable student success. And if you're a leader in higher ed and you think that the silos and separations get in the way of student success, then this podcast and my upcoming book, The Connected College, are for you. We're here to learn and work together to bust silos, question tradition, and forge partnerships so that students feel connected to their college, their community, their coursework, and their careers.
Welcome, Chase. I'm really excited for our conversation today about student experience and student success and the role that digital hubs can play in that.
Yeah, me too. I know we've been trying to connect for a little while, so it's good to be chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's understandable. You're growing like crazy and I think creating real impact. So it's going to be great for folks to learn more. And I think a great place to get started is learn how you did. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in higher ed and what you're up to today.
It's a longish story at this point. I got started in higher ed, as many people do, as a student. I went to the University of Oregon for a couple of years and also attended Monash University out of Melbourne in Australia. You can probably tell I'm not originally from the US. And the background or founding story for Pathify is when James, my co-founder, and I were at university, we noticed a pretty significant gap in how the apps we were using every day, like YouTube or Spotify or Instagram, not only how they looked, how they worked, and the gap between that and what we were being offered at university. So they looked very modern and had consumer grade design, but they had search functionality to be able to find things. They were algorithmically bringing us information. If you think about Spotify, when you go looking for a song, you don't click through a menu and browse it, genre, artist, album,
Yeah,
song.
you're not going folder to folder.
No, you're not quite. So you're searching quickly, things that have become pretty native for us, obviously. But also they were nudging us towards things that would be interesting or relevant. If I'm listening to one artist and an artist that's similar and a similar genre releases an album, I might get a notification or nudged about that. Or if that artist is in town that they know I'm listening to a lot and they've got an event or a concert, that's going to get pushed towards me. So there were things like that. And on Instagram, of course, that was very obvious how things were being brought forward and a lot of content was being hyper personalized to you. And then even with a single user ID, we were obviously our own student. We would log into a system like our My Monash portal or the mobile app, which was like a separate tool, which similar to those hubs of content are meant to be a solution that helps you navigate the institution and connect with information. And it was just such a different experience. Not only the UI was completely different and looked outdated, as it quite often does, but there was just, effectively a link farm of links to other places. There's no personalization based on who you are. Certainly nothing was being algorithmically surfaced to us, and quite literally no search functionality for, hey, I need to find this form, or I'm looking for this calendar or this event or whatever it might be. And at one point, I was involved in getting the Monash Finance Association running, and that was just like a completely separate system. Went to a different office physically, filled out paper forms, all that sort of stuff. And so just that gap was so stark, and that's why we started digging in. And I think it's it's unfair to institutions to say it should just be that easy and they should be on the cutting edge, just like every other consumer platform. Because as we started to dig in, we understood a bit more about the history of institutions and how student services have been brought in and how many academic departments there were and how siloed they were naturally. And therefore, the idea of connecting information and servicing it in a way that's hyper personalized and across all of these different fragmented systems, doing that is a very challenging problem. So I think we've only continued to gain respect for how big the problem institutions have to try to bring something cohesive and seamless together. And some institutions, without our help, have done really impressive jobs with that and continue to. But yeah, as we've met with more and more institutions, we can see that there is a very simple, at this point, outdated experience that just doesn't live up to consumer grade expectations. And that's very noticeable.
So you started off noticing this gap, no search, link farms, no recommendations, no personalization. And since then, you've been trying to close that gap mightily as you're learning about why things are the way they are and the structures, the silos, the strategy behind it. Tell us a little bit about how are you solving that problem? Tell us a little bit about what Pathify does to close that gap. How do you help folks?
So it's as we got going in like 2010s, let's say, we did it with what I now think of as like the front end single pane of glass system. But the idea was that you could either create some information, you could create a form or an announcement or a task on Pathify. But in order to get like windows into what was going on in other systems and pull that information in, the original idea was, yeah, we'll just have a suite of RESTful APIs and we'll hand it to the institution and they'll know best and they'll figure out how to integrate it. And I remember me quite randomly, just outside Tampa, who is now our CTO, another Aussie who was working in IT at Monash University, never knew him, in Melbourne. And another Aussie got up to a podium pitching a different kind of solution at this institution just outside of Tampa. This is in like 2016. And he turns up, has an Aussie accent, find out he's from Melbourne, find out he was working at Monash. Super crazy coincidence. His name's Prasad, our CTO, and he got talking to me really over the next year. It was basically like, if you think you're going to take this pretty little interface you've got, I get it. I get the problem you're trying to solve. But if you think you're going to do that and just hand it over to an institution and say, hey, you figure out how to integrate 20-year-old SIS, figure out how to integrate your LMS, take your financial aid system, get information from that, and surface it and nudge students towards things they need to do and accept in your front end, you've got no idea how the guts of an institution work and how complex that is. So he pitched me on, you are going to need a middleware platform, an integration layer that sits behind the pretty little front end. We've been building that out since 2018, since he joined. He and his brother have been very involved in that, and we've built out an entire team of people who build out the integration layer engine, and then we have a team that build out the out-of-the-box integrations that sit on top of that help you integrate information from Banner or PeopleSoft or D2L or all the other systems you know of in the space across the lifecycle. So that was a major shift in how we were going to go about doing it, and a major commitment, a leap to bring Chris in and say, yeah, okay, let's do it. And it's part of the secret sauce in a sense, because not only do we have the out-of-the-box integrations, institutions can leverage that integration layer to pull in whatever they want and surface whatever they want to students using it. So an end-or situation.
So you're creating this digital hub that solves some of the problems you were talking about in terms of personalization and push notifications and driving engagement and enabling search. And you're creating a more connected experience for students who might otherwise suffer the institutional or organizational or technology silos. And presumably that's all about improving the student experience and enabling their success. So I would love to hear how you define student success.
Yeah, I mean, it has been funny from the start because at times it could feel a little hopeless in that there was this major gap. And if we're solving this and improving the digital experience, how is that tying to the strategic priorities or the things that institutions really care about? And I think now more than ever, ROI is starting to be scrutinized at institutions. When you're talking about Monash University in Melbourne with 100,000 students 12 years ago, they have a huge flow of students that can come in. It's a well-known institution. The brand is massive, so that wasn't as much of a thought. But we've really seen over the last like 10 to 12 years, having to transform digitally, having to think about how you future-proof the institution for a hybrid experience. How are you going to attract students in a smaller pool of prospects? How you are going to retain them once they're there? And through a myriad of ways, like creating a sense of belonging and connecting them to the information they need, making sure they're nudged on the things that keep them on track. The platform and what we're doing and that like initial gap that we saw has almost grown more and more into becoming part of the strategic priorities. So to connect it specifically to retaining students or student success, the platform at the most fundamental level is better connecting a student with information, with updates, and with the campus community. And all three of those things are proxies for student success. And you can have all the buzzwords that go with it, student engagement, sensible, and all of that sort of stuff. But we have a good example from Pacific over the last year where just simply by surfacing that you have a hold on your account prior to full enrollment, they were able to reduce those holds before fall semesters started by 85%. That was nothing more than surfacing this at the right time and making sure it was available and providing the workflow to go through and take the hold off their account. So sometimes it is just like organizing information, scaffolding it, personalizing it, bringing it, nudging it at the right time. That is a major part of student success and how we impact it. And then we just have tons of stories now of institutions that use the people side or the campus community component of our platform that have been able to connect students with groups not only pre-arrival, but also like during first year and getting them in interest groups, connecting them to clubs and societies, all that sort of stuff. And my team knows we will never claim that if you work with us, you can improve student retention by 3%, but we know we impact proxies for it. So yeah, those kind of
contributors. Yeah. Finding ways to connect students to information and each other, I think, is at the root of student success, and the belonging, the engagement, the progress to degree that you're talking about, I think makes so much sense. And as you were naming all those things that now are aspects of student experience that now directly align with institutional priorities, belonging and making progress and retention. As you were listing those, I was also thinking, yeah, and now you have to do all that for less money. Right. You have to create a better experience at lower cost.
That is the ROM piece. Those are the four things that I think about. You and I were talking before this that we have become much more than a portal and a mobile app that we often get anchored as, or we need to use as an anchor. So the institution, hey, we need to upgrade our portal. That's how we can start the conversation, and then it grows from there. And part of why we're looking to redefine, I think it is the time to define a new category here, is that we are starting to connect to the controlling costs strategic priority that institutions are really needing to think about. Not only budgets have been tied at certain state levels for a long time, depending on the place, but now a bit of the federal government chaos that's going on, some other things that might be happening at state levels with budgeting. It's just something that pretty much everyone is starting to talk about or is talking about. So having a platform that is a single pane of glass that goes across the entire life cycle and serves not just students, but prospects and alumni and parents or families of prospects and students and employees of the staff as well. And if you're going to both those layers of connecting with information, now you're talking about portal and mobile app, but if you're talking about community as well, and you're talking about connecting with events and connecting with interest groups and affinity groups and clubs and orgs, we've seen institutions that have taken down, replaced fully 4, 5, 6 systems with our platform And not just that, we're hearing more and more of like ways that they're reducing, not necessarily a whole system, but reducing costs, because with the pages component of our platform, we can house content there and point it towards students based on role and that kind of thing. They're shrinking their public website footprint and having less information that's just not directed at anyone, as just public. And often you'll find public websites that have information for staff, information about financial aid, and all the things that could be better connected to someone behind an organization.
Yeah. And it's all in
uh,
it's in the kind of just in case model instead of the just in time model.
It is. And so one of the things we often find, if we get in and we replace the mobile app and the student portal initially, then institutions start to realize how it can be used more across constituents and for different use cases.
Yeah. And that really resonates with me because I often find myself in a similar sense where it's not, we need a new portal. It'll be something like we want to renovate our library. And institutions will start off thinking that means a change in their space. But then you start talking institutional strategy and you think about how can we reimagine the library as a student success hub? And yes, we need to change our space, but we also need a whole new service model where we think about tutoring and writing and media labs and maker spaces, presentations and communication, and then how you're going to staff those services. What systems are they going to work on? Are students going to check in at one place? Are they going to book an appointment using 7 different software tools? Or are you going to create a better connected experience? Are you going to share data on the back end so that you can know that somebody's there for writing and they might benefit from tutoring or whatever it might be? I do think when you pull on the student success thread, it tends to lead to other aspects of the experience and you find more ways to help because it is all connected.
We see that all the time. And we are seeing more of a cohesive, thoughtful approach to doing anything on campus and with that student success lens. Whereas before, I think this is in times of crises, things can go out the window to a degree, obviously. And when you think about the pandemic and just the last 15 years, there's been such an explosion in SaaS and ed tech that so many pockets of software have been purchased. And understandably, this is where I go back to we learned more about institutions, we gain respect for how things have come to be. There's so many point solutions and so many different things used across the place. When you come to it first principle sense, or you come to an institution for the first time and they've got 3 different CRMs and 3 different chatbots and 4 different LMSs. And sometimes this can be for like centralized institution.
I'm not 17 different events calendars and
all that kind of stuff like that. You start to dig in and really notice it. And that's just because of the proliferation in stuff, digital stuff and software over the last like 10, 15 years. Pretty nice.
Yeah, and it does seem like there's just greater awareness, not just about the need to control the costs, but to reduce the complexity and the digital, well, and the physical runaround that students can get unintentionally as they try and navigate different systems and spaces within a college or university. How are you leveraging AI to take the digital hub to the next level?
I think first part, which we've executed on to date, and there will be more. You've got the 2 sides that are coming into practice right now are how are you connecting me with information in a more conversational way, and how are you generating content on my behalf, whether that's like an email, code, or campaign, that sort of stuff. We've executed on the first side of it where, again, at our core, we're trying to more quickly and more effectively connect the student or constituent with information. And so adding a chatbot underpinned by Gemini, like essentially next to the search bar and giving a more contextual chat-based way to connect with information has been where we've gone initially. So what you see it in different verticals, like a chatbot where it's running on the LLM, but in addition to that, we're connecting the institution's contextual layer, whether it's website and files, and also all the content they put in Pathify. So it connects with that out of the box. But then we leverage all of the integrations in the integration layer. So for every integration we have, we're now starting to build like a chatbot connection, a connection from that integration to the chatbot, so that when You asked it about hold, or you asked it about finances or balances, you asked it about GPA or what's on my class schedule, it can be answering that kind of stuff as well. So Chris and I, our CTO again, took quite a bit of time. We wanted like for the hype to, there was a lot of hype obviously in 2023. Let's think about how we do this and not just rush something out. And a big part of the differentiator for us will be is out of the box, we're connected to 5, 10, 20 of your systems. And so we can start to integrate that into the chat experience as well. And I think that gives us a leg up from a lot of people are throwing around this term agent or agentic at the moment. And
Yeah.
all of that depends on the data. It's, yeah, okay. What are you going to do if the data is not super organized and has a very clear approval process that humans are involved in? But because we integrate with data for certain things like a hold or balances, enabling the end user to go and like get a balance paid from the bot is probably something we're in a better position to do than like others who might be talking about agentic in the space.
Yeah, it's James Bond without the training or the tools.
Yeah.
Probably less effective than you're operating entirely on charm
Yeah.
and good looks, which is, as you're saying, that's just like on the surface, and people need the connections between the systems. They need the integration. And I think the generating content, I think, is also interesting because a key part of student success, I think, is also saving time for staff. And just as the sprawling systems are an encumbrance to students, it begets more tools, more training,
Totally.
and more time for staff. So if you can, by bringing these things together, if you can make things easier, not just for students, but for staff and save their time, that's a huge win.
Yeah. The elements of the experience that you can create in our platform, like a content page or an announcement or a form, those like injecting those with Gen AI will be a natural, like a Gen AI option will be a natural part of where we go.
So we've talked about what's changing in terms of digital hubs as they relate to institutional strategy, things like better ROI, cost, saving time, saving money, and driving toward retention and integrating Gen AI. But what else, as you look to the future and you're trying to think about the role that digital plays in student success, how do you see this changing?
Pace at which it changes for a given institution will come down as much to like leadership and culture as anything. We see that. Like when you work with an IT office and you work with people on staff that are bought into like, we are future proofing the institution and we're going like, we're on the path to creating an experience for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that we're starting to see that more. And that is just a major part of it. And that can be something that doesn't necessarily cost anything. Start to infuse that culture and that kind of mindset of the institution, because there are a lot of institutions that are going to have to take on that mindset to thrive in the next 10 and 20 years.
I think
So,
that's such a good observation because it's sometimes the tool or the technology isn't the limiting factor. Like the solution exists. It's, do you have leadership to make the bold decisions? Do you have the culture of continuous improvement and assessment where you can effectively adopt and implement the tool? Today, I just saw Educause is doing a webinar on change management. Change management is one of the big ideas in the connected college because you can't just have good ideas, you have to have good implementation. And I think it comes down to leadership and culture, like you're saying.
there's a bit of a project internally right now around mapping the ecosystem at the institution and how it maps to the student journey. And part of that is so we can be a partner with the institution on here's how Pathify can fit long term and help transform the experience and be a part of the change management or be a change agent with them. Yeah, I think that piece is just going to be so important. Like obviously we have those things we need to do today and fires come up, but just having a view to the future and what things are going to look like in 5, 10, and 20 years and exciting people and rallying people around that. It is exciting what's going to happen, I think, with how AI will help people and how digital experiences will change and update and make our lives easier. Like the student experience should get a lot easier because of that. So getting people bought in around that is, I think it's going to be pretty important.
And as we wrap up, I'd love to hear your advice for doing that. How do you get people to understand the whole ecosystem? How do you get people excited about changing it, about embracing new technology? What's your not so secret sauce? Or
No, I think that can depend on the leader. You need an innovative leader or someone who wants to be a change agent, but knows how to do it in a way where we're not transforming everything overnight. Here's the vision, and then just vigorously over and over communicating what that is and making sure everyone's on the same page. Every meeting you're stepping into and everyone's got the same sheet of paper that says, here's where we're going, which can be tweaked over time. Even running the business as we start to grow, you start to notice that as more spokes get on the wheel, as you get bigger and there's more people in the team, just continually beating the drum and making sure everyone's on the same page towards that change is a big part of it.
I think that's a really good point. The vision, the communication, the reinforcement, because I think that's sometimes where things fall apart.
I think leaders, and I've been subject to it, they think everyone's in the organization is listening to them all the time. And it's like, you said it once, so it's stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't we have a team that is nowhere near as large as what a president is dealing with or at an institution. So just repeating it ad nauseum, making sure everyone's on the same page, I'd imagine is pretty critical.
My rule of thumb is when you start to get sick of saying the same thing, you're probably just starting to say it enough. When you hear people say it back to you is when you're probably getting close. But not that it's all top down, but I think you do have a vision, you do have the message, and you have to establish that, the cadence, the communication channels as you collaborate. So great stuff. Thanks, Chase, for all the insights and all the great work you're doing at Pathify. And I've been appreciative of that over the years and the chance to reference your results data and contribute to your magazine and podcasts. Just good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to connect. Thanks for listening to the Connected College podcast. Subscribe to my Connected College newsletter at elliottfelix.com for insights and excerpts from my upcoming book, tools you can download, and special offers. You can also find more information about talks I've given, articles I've written, and upcoming events there. And please support the podcast by rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening. Let's create connected colleges where students will succeed.